Welcome again. Welcome back. This is a second video. This is I'm reading through the what I might call the introduction, but it's called in Gary Renard's book, The Lifetimes When Jesus and Buddha Knew Each Other. I'm reading through a section called A Note from the Author about A Course in Miracles. This little section at the front of this book is a great overview of A Course by Gary, and I just thought I would read it out into this video so you could sit back and listen to it and enjoy it. So I'm now going to start off where I left off. If you've just started this video, there's a video 1 that has the first part of this recording. So here we go. Now, just actually what I want to do to start this recording is review forgiveness, the first step of forgiveness. So the first step is to really become aware of when you're upset. So whatever is happening throughout your day, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, the first step is to make a determined effort, the reason why you want to be motivated to catch your upsets is because this is the undoing of the ego, and we have to undo the ego to have the peace of God. So how do we undo it? We have to catch ourselves thinking with the ego. And the way we know that we're thinking with the ego is when we're upset. Even the most slightest irritation is thinking with the ego. And you might say that basically you could probably be, when you start out, which was when I started out, you're in the ego probably 98% of the day. So 98% of the so you can just do forgiveness all day. But what generally happens, which was what I noticed, was that you think the big upsets are the ego, and you're unaware of all the little upsets all throughout the day, all the judgments. So you start off with the big ones. So if you're a new student, just start off with the big upsets. And then as they get undone, as you start to undo and have a miracle, a change of perception, you'll start to notice the smaller and smaller, what you call small ones, but there's no order of difficulty of illusions or upsets. So they're all equally upsetting to your mind. None of them bring peace or true happiness. So the first step is to notice. Once you've learned to stop yourself from reacting with the ego, which takes the kind of discipline and mind training that is taught throughout the lessons of the Course's workbook, you can go on to the next step in forgiveness. Eventually, all 3 steps will blend into one, and they do. But like myself, this is how I started out. I did it I just did it. I just caught the big upsets. It was difficult, but you do get better at it. And eventually, it's what I call quick forgiveness, when it's 3 steps in one. So eventually all 3 steps will blend into one, and you'll do them as a habit without having to think much about the steps. You'll just know the truth and think accordingly. This is much like the Zen concept of knowing an unarticulated truth. But at first, it's essential to learn and practice the steps so you know what you're doing, and so you know what it is you're choosing between. That's how the steps become part of you, and you'll know they're part of you when you miss forgiveness if you don't do it. One of the reasons is that you'll know that you are the one who is actually getting the benefit of doing it, and this happens over time. So first of all, we have to have the trust when Jesus says that when you do this type of forgiveness, that you will have peace. And so because we don't know that, we haven't experienced that as we do forgiveness, we're going to have much more peace and love in our mind. We have to trust it. But as we do it, we start to realize we can validate that we're feeling so much better, so much more peaceful. If you stop reacting with the ego, you can take the second step and now start thinking with the Holy Spirit. This step involves what the Course calls the holy instant. That's the instant you switch from thinking with the ego to thinking with the Holy Spirit. Now you've made the right choice and you're always choosing whether you like it or not. You can't think with the ego and the Holy Spirit at the same time. They represent two complete and mutually exclusive thought systems. If you choose wisely, it leads to a totally different experience of life. It can even lead to a better outcome, but that's just an effect. Our focus is on the cause. If you take care of the cause, the effect will take care of itself. The ego has been telling you that what you're seeing is real. It tells you that the body is real and that you have a real problem you need to take care of with real people in a real world. That's what the ego's whole thought system is about, getting you to think that you're a body and there's issues and people and a world. The Holy Spirit has a totally different story. What the Holy Spirit's going to tell you is what you're seeing is not true. Aside from describing it as a dream, the Course also describes the ego's illusory world as a projection that's coming from your own unconscious mind. Because you can't see your unconscious, you can't see that you're the one that projection is coming from. You've made a projection of bodies and a trillion forms of separation. Now, I'd just like to really hammer this message home now. It's not you as the person you think you are that's projecting the world. So it's a mistake a lot of course students make here to hear this message and think, you know, I, as Bill, am projecting the world. That's not the teaching. You, who you think you are as that person, is part of the projection. That's all part of the projection that's coming from your unconscious mind. So the projection is coming from a mind that you have no awareness of. So to say, oh, I feel guilty, I'm projecting this, and walking around saying, look at the world I'm projecting, you thinking you're Bill and you're projecting the world. That's not how it's meant to be taken. And so I really like to very quickly point out, do not make that mistake. Tell yourself that the projection of the world is coming from part of your mind, and that you, who you think you are, your whole idea about yourself, is part of that projection. And as you work through this forgiveness and you undo this idea of yourself, your mind starts to open up to where that projection of this idea of sin and guilt and death, everything that the world shows you, you start to get an awareness of where this projection is coming from and why you, not you as Bill or whatever your name is, you aren't choosing it. It was chosen by a decision in the mind that's levels back. So where you are, if you just think you're a person, you think you're a name and a body living in a world and there's all these people around you, that's why we need to work on the first level of coming back. And as you start to, your mind starts to open, you'll become aware of certain decisions. You'll become, so this is all about catching the ego, looking at it and letting it go. And that ego idea is the idea of you as a false self, you believing you're a body in a world. And because I've been through this whole undoing period, the undoing of the mind, of the mind that thinks it's separate, I can vouch that if you do it in this way, I love Gary Renard's books. They were extremely helpful because Arten and Perse are on the money here. And if you read these books side by side with A Course in Miracles, I believe that it's such a great way, using Arten and Perse's teachings alongside Jesus's teachings in A Course in Miracles. I never did it perfectly, but I was consistently, like if I'd had a bad day and I judged all day, I was in the ego, listening to the ego, and like a puppet pulled around, your mind's pulled around, you're upset. Because the ego is like a puppet master. It pulls you around, it gives you your thoughts and you agree with it. So there's a part of you that's agreeing, that likes it, that likes the ego, that wants to feel it's separate and has an individual self. So anyway, let's keep going. So you've made a projection of bodies and a trillion forms of separation, but people are not bodies. They are still perfect spirit at home in God. That's such an important part. If you can think of everyone as spirit rather than a person with a personality and separate interests, and start to look at them as perfect spirit, you're really starting to look with the Holy Spirit. So this has merely been forgotten. The Course asks you, what if you recognise this world is a hallucination? That's what we have to start looking at. We have to start looking that it's a projection, a hallucination, an illusion. What if you really understood you made it up? So in other words, it's coming from part of our mind that we wanted, not we as the individual self, because remember that's part of the projection, that whole going to sleep and thinking we're a separate person. The reason why it says, what if you really understood you made it up? It's what this is pointing to is that it's to not think that the dream is happening from somewhere else, that you're this, this little person in a dream being dreamed by somewhere else. It's important to remember that it's coming from our mind and we're all connected into that mind. So that's why there's only one ego appearing as many. What if you realize that those who seem to walk about it to sin and die, attack and murder and destroy themselves are wholly unreal? Well, that's what a dream is. A dream is unreal. This is a dream of separation. It's a dream that is totally unreal. It has no reality. Eventually, it would be impossible for you to ever react to the world the same way you used to. And in choosing the Holy Spirit, you would be taking the second of these 3 steps that awaken spirit in yourself. As the Course teaches, the term mind is used to represent the activating agent of spirit, supplying its creative energy. By choosing spirit, you activate it in your own mind. The Course also teaches that miracles heal because they deny body identification and affirm spirit identification. So the Holy Spirit's message and teaching is that we are going to heal because the Holy Spirit is bringing in to our awareness that we are spirit, we are love, we are one with God. He's really bringing that message home and he's telling what you're seeing is not real. Like in the dream, awaken and see that it's just a dream. It can't have any reality. How can perfect love create something like this? Everything here rusts and dies and crumbles and turns to dust. And we have to really look seriously at this world that we think is real and say, would a loving God make this? That's why other religions that believe God made the world, they can't make sense of it. No one can make sense of this if you think God made the world, because everything dies here. If you think this world is real and that God made it, you would be totally confused. And they just say it's a mystery. Well, the Course in Miracles says nothing is a mystery. It gives you an analogy of exactly where we are and what's happening. And it is a true way home, and it is one of the quickest ways to come home to God. But you have to be diligent in applying it. If you're not, if you don't have the commitment to do it, and you're just going to be upset all day by the ego and be like pulled around by the puppet. That's why Bill said there's got to be another way, because all the ways they were using weren't working, because nothing works here. Nothing works except this process of forgiveness, and of course other spiritual teachings work as well. But this teaching of A Course in Miracles has been, Jesus does say it's one of the quickest ways to undo the ego and awaken to your true self, which is really just like the ego is like a false operating system in our mind, right? And it slowly gets, it's like a virus, and it slowly gets, the Holy Spirit's like the virus, the thing that takes the virus away, cleans up the operating system. So if you can think of your mind as having a virus, like a total false thought system, and every time you're upset, you're in that false thought system, and you just need the one that comes in and clears up the operating system. And the beautiful operating system of the Holy Spirit, all the right-minded thoughts are still there. The oneness, that God's true self, our knowing ourselves as being one with God, is all there, still in your mind, like it's still there in your mind now. But what happens is you've got a false operating system over the top of it. You're not even realizing there's a virus in your mind. So as we go through the undoing process in time and space, which all gets changed in our mind as well through this undoing of the ego, it slowly takes away the ego mind, and there's less and less upset, and there's more and more contentment, there's more peace, there's more simple joys. It's just because they're all the fruits of the Spirit, Holy Spirit mind. So that's the motivation to do forgiveness, is to undo it. And how we undo the ego is we have to notice it. And how we notice it is we notice when we're upset, and we become more and more attuned to the slightest upset, and we look forward to it. And there was a time when towards the end of my journey, where I actually was saying, bring it on, bring on any upsets, bring it on, because I want to know what's left in my mind to undo. So towards the end, you might have quite long periods of feeling this beautiful love and peace in your mind, and that just gets extended naturally. And then there's a little upset. And rather than saying, oh, why am I upset? Just say, that's good, because there's more to undo. So we don't know what's left to undo of the ego in our mind to awaken. So we should actually really look forward to any time we're upset, because it's another forgiveness opportunity. And that forgiveness opportunity allows us to get to more and more peace. So we want to look forward to being upset, because it shows us what we've got to undo. And then once we know how we undo it, we've got a process. There's no mystery to the Course in Miracles. It's just the same forgiveness practice over and over, all day, every day, until you're free. And all you need to do is be vigilant, have the willingness to do it. So where was I at? Okay, A Course in Miracles, the miracle is a kind of forgiveness I'm describing, a kind of forgiveness that comes from a place of cause and not effect, the kind of forgiveness where you stop being a victim and start being responsible for your own projection. That's what I was just saying. You start being responsible. saying this is coming from my mind. When I'm upset, I have the ego. So you just take, you're not saying, you start to say, no one's upsetting me. It's not possible to be upset by anybody or anything. What's upsetting me is my ego thoughts about it. So you start to see the cause. Native Americans have often said, behold the great mystery. A Course in Miracles says, behold the great projection, because that's all that the universe of time and space is. As some disciplines have taught for thousands of years, it's all an illusion. You may not be able to see where the projection is coming from, but you can undo any effects the projection has on you by withdrawing your belief in it, which gives it power over you. It's such an important sentence here. You may not be able to see where the projection is coming from, and you won't, not until a lot longer into the forgiveness practices, so the undoing of the ego. What happens is the ego is like a split part of our mind that we're living in, and it's like a ball of beliefs, the thoughts of separation all existing in this one area of the mind. And when we start to move over to the Holy Spirit mind, that has amazing experiences and realizations in it. And that's going to show you where the projection's coming from. You'll see, because when you're living in the ego, you've got no awareness of what else is in your mind. And you wouldn't even believe that, oh, I could be aware of all this infinite love, the projection, the tiny mad idea. You're going to see it all. You're going to see it and see that it never happened. So you're going to be really comfortable with all these paradoxes. You're going to see that you're dreaming a dream, and you're going to laugh at it because you're going to know your real self. You're going to know your true self. And this silly dream is just going to be nothing to you. The dream is not being dreamed by anyone else. There is nobody else, only the projection. So there's no other people. There's nothing in the world. It's all a projection. If anyone or anything in this world has the power to hurt you, it's because you have given it that power. Now it's time to take that power back and put the power of belief where it belongs, in God. Over time, this changes everything. The Course says miracles are habits. Your mind is being retrained to forgive instead of judge. But your part, our part in this, is to have that vigilance and determination. As you wake up in the morning each day, say, right, today's all about catching my upsets. Because how else are you going to undo the ego unless you catch it? And what happens is, as you undo, as the Holy Spirit helps you perceive it differently, it clears away. And the Course says, when I forgive, this will disappear. It disappears. And if someone you think is upsetting you, what you don't realise is the thoughts that you have about that person are upsetting you. We're never upset for the reason we think. The thoughts are I can only be affected by my thoughts, the Course says. So nobody's ever upsetting me, no situation, nothing outside me is ever affecting me. It's always my ego thoughts about it. And so the Holy Spirit goes to work to change those thoughts. And as those thoughts change, the images that we see, that we think are upsetting us, just don't upset us anymore. The images that we think are there, we just don't see that anymore. We just don't get upset. So it's not about changing the world. It's about changing our mind about the world. And that's the Holy Spirit's job. As for your experience, you can get to the point where the world cannot hurt you. As the Course says about the Holy Spirit's form of forgiveness, it denies the ability of anything not of God to affect you. This is the proper use of denial. By being at cause instead of effect, you are reversing the thinking of the world. Now, this takes a little bit of time to understand cause and effect, and I would suggest that you listen to Ken Wapnick, talk about cause and effect if you really want a really true, deep understanding of this. But basically, I've explained it, that we think the effect, that the cause is outside of us, somebody saying something, and we think the effect is coming from the cause. We think that that person is upsetting us. So we say the cause is the person and the effect is me being upset. And so the ego says, that's the ego's interpretation. And then the ego says, to get the effect of being happy, we have to get the cause to change. Where A Course in Miracles says, there's no cause outside you. The cause of all your upsets is your ego thoughts. And if you change them, then the effect, the cause will reduce, the upsets reduce, and the effect is the miracle, and the effect is peace by doing forgiveness. So the cause, we go to the true cause, which is the ego thought system, and we have that undone. By being at cause instead of effect, you are reversing the thinking of the world or about the world. Now forgiveness is justified. It is if all of this is real, if all the world's going to be real, then forgiveness is not justified. But if it's your projection, in other words, if it's your ego mind that is telling you, and the ego is the projection of the images as well, not only the interpretation. So the ego has projected all the images. It's like a movie or a stage play that we're seeing, a dream. It's coming from our mind, and then the ego thoughts put a meaning on it. If it's your projection, forgiveness is totally justified. In other words, if you want to become free, then forgiveness is the way home. The more you get used to looking at the world as not coming at you, in other words, this person's not saying anything to upset you, but coming from you, and my ego thoughts, my thoughts about my interpretation of what the ego has said. Where's my interpretation? In my mind, my thoughts, my beliefs, my concepts. That's what's upsetting me. The more impossible it becomes for you to react to it the way you used to. And as you start doing this forgiveness, you will react very differently, because the Holy Spirit is going to change the way you look at the world, and you will just see a call for love. You'll see everyone calling for love, and you'll just overlook anything else that the ego is trying to say is there. And the more you realise you're dreaming, which in other words, you just become aware that this is just a big dream, and that's just how you do forgiveness. I'm just going to move a bit further down in this section. I'm often asked various questions at my workshops about what the Course means. And I usually start off by saying that the best way to know what the Course means is to go by what it says. That may seem obvious, but the Course says a lot of things people don't want to hear, and there's tremendous psychological resistance to getting it. For example, it says, there is no world. This is the central thought the Course attempts to teach. Most people don't want to hear that. They want the world, and they desire the things in it they are attracted to, hoping at the same time that the bad things won't come to them, or at least not be too bad. Yet the Course also says, with the voice of the Course, Jesus speaking in the first person, I once asked you to sell all you have and give it to the poor and follow me. This is what I meant. If you have no investment in anything in the world, you can teach the poor where their treasure is. The poor are merely those who have invested wrongly, and they are poor indeed. The Course is talking here about your psychological investment. It's not talking about giving away possessions. So he's asking, I once asked you to sell all you have. In other words, sell all you have and give to the poor and follow me. It's basically saying lose your attachments to the things of the world. You don't have to sell everything you have. And he's not asking us to do anything in the dream. So he's asking us to do it in our mind. So he's asking us to give up our attachments, sell them, give them away, your attachments, and give it to the poor. In other words, give love to the poor of spirit, the ones calling for love, and follow me. So we follow his example because Jesus went through this. If you have no investment in anything in the world, you can teach the poor where their treasure is. In other words, you don't value anything in the world. So you teach the poor, and the poor is just the people searching for happiness. Every mind that's searching for the truth, happiness, peace, everyone's searching for it. And we can teach them where their treasure is, say, like what I'm doing now, what I'm teaching now, through Gary, an art and person, Jesus. I'm just giving my voice over to this. Teach them where their treasure is, inside, in the spirit, in the love of God, going home to the love and the beauty and the divinity of God, having a beingness in that, and letting go of the idea of guilt and sin, and that we're unworthy, that we're broken, that we're not enough. That's all ego rubbish. And to come to know our true home with our Father, a Father that loves us, a love that loves us as a beautiful father or mother would love us, completely love us. And we come to know that. So I'm going to finish this video here, and I can't see the time as I'm doing this, so I'm just going to have a guess at finishing. And so this is the second video. So I'm not sure how many videos I'm going to make of this, but anyway, thank you. And I love you, and I bless you, and I honour you, and I see only your holiness. And thank you. I'll make another recording and continue on in this beautiful teaching that Gary has put in his book. Thank you.